Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Today we are going to talk about Pakistan's economics and monetary policy. It is important because there are many issues that one has to actually look at. On one side, if you are looking at how media covers the story, the value of dollar keeps on appreciating. Rupee has taken a tumble. It has reached, dollar's price has reached, today it crossed momentarily beyond the psychological limit of 170 rupees. Later on, of course, it goes up and down, but this is how things are. So on one side, that is the issue. On the other side, inflation is quite a serious issue, although the finance minister, when he was speaking to the media yesterday and day before yesterday, he pointed out that Pakistan's inflation rate is the least in comparison to other countries. Be it as it may, the common man, the voter of this government, the citizen, the taxpayer, everybody actually suffers when inflation is at a high level. We are going to talk about that as well. The finance minister said that with the commodities which are a part of the sensitive price index, the commodities which are very important to people, the government will step in and offer some kind of subsidy. So that is also something that one has to look at, and these issues are important, right? But there are statements that I had to share with you, and I'm going to just share them. Let me quote the finance minister, who says the government will start giving targeted subsidy on basic food items for food commodities from this month, which will cover 35% to 40% population of the country. Shaukat Tareen, the finance minister of Pakistan. The increase in international prices during the past couple of years was due to low food production and high demand owing to COVID-19 and supply chain disruption. Again, this is his quote. There are two other very important quotes. The government is working for turnaround of loss-making state-owned enterprises. The government will establish a board and privatization commission which consists of world-class professionals. The board will stabilize the SOEs before their privatization. And then he went on to say, the government is focusing on bolstering the agricultural production in the medium to long-term. Commodity warehouses, cold storages, and agri-malls will be established with the aim to eliminate the role of middleman and ensure that the farmers get due price for their products. The strategic reserves of major commodities are also being built in order to ensure smooth supplies in the market. So these are the quotes that we had to share with you, and then of course I'm going to introduce the panel we have today. In the studio I am joined by Ali Salman Saab, who is Executive Director of Prime Institute, an economist. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. On Skype, I am joined by Dr. Salman Shah Saab, who is a former federal finance minister, advises the Punjab government. Dr. Salman Shah, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Abid Qayyum Saleri, member Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, also head of SDPI, joins us on Skype as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. With your permission, Ali Salman Saab and Dr. Salman Saab, let me start with Dr. Abid Qayyum Saleri. Dr. Saab, I want you to actually give us an overview of the economy. Where do you think it is standing right now?
Thank you. Farrukh, I think overview of the economy, that depends which critical spectrum you are placed at right now. Either you are part of opposition benches or you are part of treasury benches, but more than politics, overview of economy depends on which quintile, income quintile that one belongs to, and if one is part of top 20% quintile of Pakistani's economy, of course, no matter whatever happens, everything is all well, nothing to worry about. The 40% bottom quintile, they were worried, but today's statement, which was quoted in the media by Ashok Karim, I think that must have given them a hope. And it is about targeted subsidy. We know that a SARS program census, I'm using the word census, not survey, because it was a door-to-door survey on computerized tabs, taking GPRS coordinates and collecting well-being data, well-being survey. That is completed in almost 90% cases, and government have now a very strong database that can be triangulated with data of FPR, data of NADRA, and a filter can be applied to provide direct and targeted subsidies, as the finance minister rightly mentioned, to the bottom 40% income earners of Pakistan. And if we are in the middle layer, which most of us sitting in this program are, then I think perhaps we need to, we will be ready to feel the pinch of things, both because of rupee depreciation, because we consume imported stuff, and because we are not part of any group that would be getting any targeted subsidies, and of course we are not part of 20% rich clubs who own 49% of wealth of this country.
So, Dr. Saab, correct me if I'm wrong, that it is, in your view, a mixed bag. When you were saying that it depends on whether you are part of the government or the treasury benches or opposition, I was thinking about those benches where common man sits and elects all the governments. So we have to actually talk about them as well. With your permission, let me bring in Dr. Salman Shah Saab. Dr. Salman Shah, you have listened to Abid Qayyum Saleri Saab's comment. I want you to kindly comment on this question as well, your overview, and then pray explain to us what is going on with the rupee versus dollar.
Well, I think one thing is very clear, that Pakistan's economy has been in a very big hole. I would even call it was in a ditch, and we are coming out of that ditch, and the last 3 years have been very, very painful. And as you can see that the IMF program which we have now in place, which is probably also suspended because of the corona pandemic, but it may also come on board. But 2 or 3 things have happened in that program. One is that the exchange rate is now market determined, which is a very positive thing for the economy, that in the sense that the supply and demand of dollars will determine the exchange rate. Now, what has happened because of this, that naturally we are a very import-dependent country. Lots of our energy is imported. Our food items recently are very big bills for food, and they are in dollars. They will become more expensive. And to top it off, you have an international movement of prices going north, and I think that both of them together means that our import bill is going up, and our exports are going up, but not to the same extent as our imports, and our current account deficit has reappeared. The central bank is still, I think, accumulating reserves, because we still don't have enough reserves. We have probably around 3.5 to 4 months of imports in our reserves, and maybe this number needs to go to around 5 to 6 months. So I think that this causes a lot of problems for the country, particularly from an inflationary point of view. And it becomes a political kind of hot potato, because the opposition then takes the government to task on this, and they know very well that the government hands are kind of tight and they print the dollars. But I think over the medium term and over the longer term, this policy will definitely give us very good results, because number one, your import substitution is very attractive. Number two, your exports are very attractive. And one of the things which is really handicapping us is our energy sector, and that energy sector, as you know, is based on fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are really, not only are they very expensive, they are also polluting our environment. and we have contracts which are very bad contracts in a way which put Pakistan consumer in a very bad position. So I think that these are the things which now we are tackling, and along with this we
and in the long run, Dr. Saab, things might improve. Let me, with your permission, let me come back to the studio. I have a guest very patiently waiting for his turn. Ali Salman Saab, let me ask you to comment overall economy, dollar rupee, and then circular debt. That seems to have been a huge concern for Pakistan. Dr. Saab just brought up the issue of fossil fuels and how we keep on importing. Circular debt keeps on bloating. So what is being done about it, and what should be done about it?
So first of all, I think from a general point of view, where the economy is today.
Yeah.
I recently wrote an article in which I sort of summarized the situation of our like 3 years economic performance by explaining that we should understand the economy as a system where we have a government, private sector, and household.
Right.
So all the three actually subsystems then constitute the overall economic system.
Right.
And I would give reasonably like B+ score as far as the government managing its finances is concerned.
Okay.
It started from like a huge current account deficit of $20 billion, achieved reasonable surplus. Now we are again in deficit, but I think it has done well by also decreasing the fiscal deficit over last 3 years. Exchange rate liberalization was a great move forward. On the other hand, I think the private sector has been a mixed bag, I would say, because on one hand we had COVID situation. We had increase of unemployment due to the partial lockdown and also the world crisis.
And at that time, economy was actually contracting.
And economy was contracting. And if you look at the economics of household, certainly inflation is a major concern.
Right.
But then inflation has also two components. While we are sitting in cities, we generally look at inflation only from our perspective, because it has it has more weightage on the political, in terms of political stability.
Yeah.
But the rural people who are producing the commodities are actually benefiting from increased prices.
Right.
So we should look at inflation.
Rural, with due respect, I respect what you're saying about things not being monoliths, right?
Yeah.
So rural population is not a monolith either. They have their middle class, they have their lower class. Do you think that inflation is going to hit them any less?
The large percentage of our rural population is small farmers, right?
Okay.
And 90% of the ownership of farms are actually small farms.
Yeah.
So
but
actually
there is a lower cadre also.
There is a lower cadre. There are also
landless peasants.
There are landless, but they're also being employed. When you have more agriculture activity in the farms, obviously they are working. And each year actually we see a shortage of agriculture and rural labor also.
Right.
So I think the inflation has to be looked at carefully, because if you just look at it from an urban point of view, then we might look at...
Are you happy with the government's decision to step in and introduce subsidies for the very vulnerable in the society?
So I will be cautious here. What we have seen is that subsidies tend to favor those people who deserve less of it. So in the past, for instance, we had introduced subsidies on petrol, for instance, and people who were needing less of it got more of it.
Okay.
And so instead of a subsidy, because by doing subsidy, you are actually intervening in the price. And for instance, utility store. Now, okay, government might supply subsidized products, utility store, but utility stores cannot close its door to those people who are rich or who may not deserve that subsidy.
But they don't go there, do they?
So many of, you cannot stop. So many people
I've seen utility stores over the years, and their quality is such. And I'm not saying that they're bad, but usually rich people wouldn't go to any utility.
Yeah. So now we have, of course, the trend is changing. But just on that point, I think what government is really trying to aim in the future is using the Ehsaas program and the mechanics to actually ensure that those people who are in the bottom income groups receive direct cash support rather than intervening in the prices.
Right.
So I think it's a difference
I asked you a
between-
couple of more questions, but I'll have to take those questions to Dr. Salari. I'll come back to you as well. Dr. Salari, one aspect that concerns everybody is circular debt and the way it has bloated over years and how it is going to impact things. And then what Ali Salman Saab said about subsidies, that also becomes a problem. Whether you are going to introduce subsidies which are targeted, or they might be intentioned as targeted, but they end up giving relief to the wrong kind of people who are already affluent. Your take, sir.
Well, I think targeted subsidies as with the use of data which is captured using latest technology, there will be some ray of hope that the subsidy would end up going to the most deserving ones, those who require it the most, especially the SAS program mechanism. So one is quite optimistic about it. One still needs to see that how the energy subsidy, their fate would be decided. Of course, IMF and many other multilateral funders, they are asking us about targeted subsidy in the energy sector regime as well, and government needs to come up with some sort of foolproof mechanism for it. But coming to your energy sector debt management, I think progress is being made, and the important bottleneck of getting NAB's permission to make payment to the power producers, private power producers who had installed their plants under power policy of 1995-2002. That is quite a significant step in it. So once the government pays them, they would be able to renegotiate some of their terms of trade, and that would bring some of the deferred payments, reduce some of the deferred payments. Once that landmark is achieved, government would be able to then negotiate with its own domestic power producers, which is one of the preconditions to negotiate with CPEC-based power producers. So when China is contacted to renegotiate some of its power tariff agreements with us, China's condition was that first we have to implement these renegotiation with the pre-existing power producers. So I hope that some progress will be made towards it. But the second aspect of it is going clean and green using renewable energy sources. I hope this COP26, which is going to happen in Glasgow, where Prime Minister is also going to attend, that would turn into a major global event where the global north, they would be able to provide technology to countries like Pakistan. So,
right.
If not,
I'm glad that there is an element of optimism that everybody is talking about fixes and solutions. I will request all of you, whenever I come to you, sir, to give me a timeline also. How quickly will these fixes actually start impacting the system? Because circular debt is a big concern. We keep on hearing about renegotiating the arrangements with various IPPs, the cost of import and rest of these things, but we still have a lot to do. How soon do you think that circular debt can be fixed?
Well, at least it would start the accumulation of new circular debt that can be tamed. From this winter, you will find this proposal of Energy Minister, whereby tariff of energy usage would be reduced so that people, they can rely more on electricity for their heating purposes in winter rather than relying on gas. So instead of paying capacity payment charges to the power producers for not paying electricity from them, government has taken this decision to provide that relief to consumers so that consumers, they can consume more electricity during winter when it's non-peak season, and that would save government spending on capacity payment charges, and B, save government spending on gas import, which would be
right.
new.
So by the winters we are going to see some improvement, but how much improvement, we still have to actually look at that. Allow me to go to Dr. Salman Shah. Dr. Saab, you were listening to all the comments made. On one side, circular debt. On the other side, SOEs, they are a huge concern as well. We keep on talking about reforming them, but you have been minister in the past, you know, there seems to be an element of inertia that rides many of these organizations. How do you think these problems can be fixed, and quickly so? Because we haven't seen in the past 10-20 years any evidence that it can be fixed very quickly without divestment.
Yeah, I think you are right, and I am not very optimistic about the energy sector because, I mean, if you look at the prices over there, the current average price is around 25 rupees per unit, and if we can go to renewables, it can come down to around 10 rupees a unit. So I think there is a huge gap, and I think that unless we take some very strong measures to cap this and roll back the fossil fuel industry and encourage our renewable energy, which can come in very quickly. So even now I see that not enough room is being created for solar, and I think we need to ensure that in the next 3 years we can really end up solar in a very big way. Already this government is investing in hydel. Lots of projects are coming online, but they are long-term projects, and it will take a lot of time before they can really make a difference. So I think on the energy sector, some dramatic progress has to be created, otherwise I don't think our productivity and competitiveness can be improved with this kind of the energy sector. On the other side, I think the investment which we need to attract because of the pandemic, foreign direct investment is down. As you saw that even the spectrum auction did not attract the kind of investment we were expecting. And my feeling is that because of the pandemic, foreign investment is not going to pick up very soon. I think we need to focus more on CPEC and Chinese investment, because Chinese businesses which are relocating elsewhere, we must try to bring them here, and for that we have to be very, very aggressive in terms of attracting them here and removing their hurdles which are enormous. And so I think that investment has to be the key going forward. If we can generate the investment, we will get the employment also moving up, and that will be the biggest relief which we can give to the people. So I think that overall, if you look at the construction sector is doing well, the export sector has invested quite a bit, but their impact is going to be there in another 6 months or so. And if we can get the investment moving, particularly for CPEC, that would be superb. So I think that is where our effort should be. And then we have a big problem in terms of reforms. Our reforms of various government entities are way behind. You talked about the state-owned enterprises. They are a big drain on us, and I think we have to be very bold with them, and we have to move into a situation where we have to privatize all of these, in a way, gas guzzlers who are taking up lots of our resources and not giving much in return. So I think the work is cut out for the government, and I'm sure the Prime Minister is very aggressive, and he is going to make a major move towards these reforms, which will improve the productivity and competitiveness of the Pakistan economy.
And that is, Dr. Saab actually brings us to the matter of time. Usually, and Ali Salman Saab, usually it is thought that the government's first 3 years are basically for them to reform the economy and turn things around. And then the next 2, while you are approaching the elections, you are supposed to provide relief to the people. And we are still talking about bringing about these massive reforms. And then there are concerns regarding, Pakistan's first highest, bill is actually debt retirement. And we are engaged with IMF. So we have committed to certain reforms and we still have to go there. So now what happens? Don't you see there is a lot of contradiction in circumstances?
So I think the reforms are over.
Okay.
And actually, as Dr. Salman was also mentioning, we had a pretty painful 3 years which we have passed.
Okay.
Now actually it is the time
Energy
for
sector.
Growth. So in terms of energy sector, I think this will not be short term.
Okay.
We will have to wait for many contracts to mature till 2030. I do not see
2030.
I do not see any immediate respite from our energy problems.
So what do? You remove subsidies then?
So we have to remove all subsidies. That already is happening.
If you do that,
But
that means that cost of electricity
up.
is going to go down,
It will go up.
right? But if it goes up, how do you actually tell people we are providing you relief?
No, you see, one of the important steps which the government, I think, has taken, but it has not been completely rolled out, is what is called this market-based electricity exchange system. We have surplus electricity available in our system now.
Okay.
But we are not able to use it because of the distribution and transmission bottlenecks.
Hats off to the previous governments which actually came up with the idea of adding more installed capacity.
So we have
but
more
not
installed
distribution.
capacity than we are using.
Yeah.
So actually we should encourage more consumption.
Okay.
And more consumption will hopefully, not immediately, but hopefully bring the average price down.
Okay.
It will not happen overnight though. We have to come over.
When you say not overnight, what do you mean? How long?
I think if the government start encouraging more consumption, this was just highlighted, it will take maybe a couple of years.
How does the
before we can
government do
see? Government has to bring in policies to encourage more consumption of electricity.
What are those policies? Like you cannot subsidize, you cannot make them cheap.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah, I mean you have to switch. You have to encourage more consumption. Let's say during the winter, you have to also, bring in.
I get a knock at the door and somebody brings another digital wire and says, connect. That won't happen, right?
Yeah, no, that won't happen.
Yeah,
But for instance, in previous years, we were dependent a lot on the supply of gas.
Right.
So we have run out of gas. So we have to find substitute for it.
No, but you are simultaneously. I get what you are saying. Instead of gas, use electricity, right? This is what you are saying.
Yeah.
But you are providing me electricity at considerable high price.
Yeah.
So how are you encouraging me? The only thing you can do is sever my gas connection and say you have to use whatever you have got.
Market is name of choices. So you create options for people, and then that's why I'm saying it will not happen overnight. Even if you do it, it will not happen overnight.
Okay.
So we had, for instance, in the past, we had the policy of captive power, right? So we encourage the private sector to produce their own electricity. Now we are asking to not use your captive power, come to grid. So these are the options which are being available in the market. But as I'm saying, that this will not happen overnight. You have to, now the system has enough electricity. It has to be properly transferred to systems.
SOEs. What do you do with that?
So the first thing should have been to roll out privatization.
Okay.
Government was very reluctant.
Nobody is going to buy it in the parliament. Politicians are going to create a lot of ruckus. You have seen how People's Party actually deals with these things. Yeah. Why are we talking about things that might not be there? Are they policy options? Because system doesn't allow it. In the past, you tried to privatize steel mills.
Yeah.
And Supreme Court stopped it.
Yeah, so that was a big loss for Pakistan.
Right. And then Bikodek, too, in the end, we lost the investment and we had to, we are asked to pay a fine.
We have to respect international contracts.
Yeah.
Right? So you see, in terms of any of these SOEs, the political capital has to be spent on reforms. This is not going to be very popular. Maybe the time has already passed for these steps. But still, I think we should give
you just. I'm happy that later on you said that the time might have passed, because when earlier I asked about reforms, you said reforms are over.
Yeah.
And we still are talking about reforms.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's what I'm saying, that the best time was to be done in like first couple of years.
Okay.
So we should have rolled out the privatization of steel mill. We should have taken all the protests, and so the government should have handled it. By that time, I think we lost the time, and now probably especially after Corona, it has become even more difficult.
Right.
But we should note that government recently announced this expression of interest for the privatization of steel mill,
Right.
which is
one of the many.
This is one of
liability,
the many couple of hundreds privatization transactions.
Yeah, let me go back to Dr. Abid Qayyum Salari Saab. Privatization, sir. Why do we have so much pushback against the idea of privatization in this country? It is a good idea. We privatized banks in 90s, that worked. We privatized PTCL, that worked. So why is there so much pushback at this moment?
Well, I think looks like political parties, they are now held hostage of their own past narratives. And one can see when People's Party tried to privatize, its opposition at that time stopped privatize any progress on privatization. When PMLN tried to privatize, again we saw riots on the roads of Karachi. Couple of precious lives also got lost in those protests, and privatization couldn't take place. And now when PTI is trying to privatize, of course, both the People's Party and PMLN, along with other parties, they are creating hurdles. So all of the political parties, when they were in opposition, they had a narrative somehow which was anti-privatization. And that is one of the major hurdles whenever we talk of privatization, of course, and that narrative that keeps on haunting. But then the second thing is about transparency of privatization. Some of the transactions that you mentioned are the success stories, but then we know that here we have a lot of negative stories about privatization. Pakistan Steel Mill, we know that Shaukat Aziz Saab and at that time Hafiz Sheikh was his finance minister. When they tried to privatize it, it was a court's ruling that rightly stopped privatization at that moment. And then later on we saw that various other occasions, superior judiciary, it stopped government from privatizing. So there are quite a few issues. It has become quite complicated, rather no-go area for any government to privatize.
Right. This is important. I have to come back to Ali Salman Saab. They are impossible choices. When you are a policy maker or a think tanker like your good self, you talk about various things that can be done on books. But when you are in government, balancing them, introducing them seems impossible. Please tell me that this situation, while I'm talking to you and I'm hearing all these contradictions, the situation is not as ridiculous as it seems to me right now. Because, okay, there are good examples of privatization. We have mentioned them. But then there is KE, right? Karachi Electric, and umpteen other various examples where it seems that for a consumer it has been more or less a nightmare.
I do not agree with that.
Yeah, okay.
I think KE has been overall a success story of privatization.
Okay, how?
First of all, it has its own phases. For instance, the first after privatization, there were like 3 management changes, and initially years it was very unstable. But when the current management took over, it invested in the system, and in a few years, Karachi, much earlier than the rest of the country, got rid of electricity outages in the industrial areas. So Karachi was.
Are you on social media?
Little bit, yeah.
Okay. Do you have friends on social media from Karachi as well?
I do have.
Do you hear them complaining about what is going on? Regardless, you believe in market forces, don't you? And you have made it abundantly clear that you actually believe in free market economy.
Yeah.
Was it essential to privatize such an important utility in a way that it still remains a monopoly?
That's a very important point you have raised. I think with privatization, there's another concept which we always respect, is the market. Privatization is not equal to market always. When you are just transferring, let's say, a state monopoly to a private monopoly, you are not respecting the full forces of market competition. Because privatization should lead to competition. Privatization should lead to consumer choice, and hence more efficiency and hence reduction of cost, etc. But if it is not happening, because in some cases, like KE, you are absolutely right. For instance, the distribution could have been opened up. Karachi is a big city, and we could have multiple, distribution companies can be created in a different kind of privatization plan. If we were just
and actually competing in the same space.
Competing in the same space.
And that doesn't happen. It has never, our geniuses who have been planning all this NEPRA and transformation of energy sector, they have never given a thought to competition, not only in generation, but also in distribution. I mean, and transmission is the third thing we have all ignored.
Distribution, I would say, in the terms of generation, we already have the competition. Right? So last
because
25
of
years,
IPPs and RPPs
was actually kind of the market competition. But I think over the last few years, the performance of some of the even state-owned and distribution companies has been not too bad. For instance, Gujranwala has posted surplus. Faisalabad has been, done quite well. So it depends also on the respective utility companies, on the governance structure, on the efficiency of the management. But generally, I would say that the privatization may not equal to desirable outcomes if we are not opening up for the competition.
Regarding consumers, I defer to your judgment regarding how KE situation has gone. But regarding my own experiences or my friends, they keep on complaining all the time. But let me ask you very quickly. I'm told that we are left with a couple of minutes. But because I know my own sector, media, better than anything else, Pakistan has 50 odd news channels, right? Not a single children's channel, entertainment, so on with other things. If market forces know what is happening and they work, what is wrong with our economy? Because most of the people keep on doing exactly the same thing, keep on going for copycat examples rather than investing in news sector. Is there something fundamentally wrong with our market forces at this moment?
Farrukh, while I am a fan of market, let me make a general statement that we have not really opened up this country to market in true sense. Right? So we still have government everywhere, or in most of the sectors. If not directly, then indirectly, through regulation, through taxes, and through many other measures, we still have a heavy footprint of the government. And I'm of the view that some of these sectors can still be improved if you let the market play its force.
No, but you don't agree that there is herd instinct in our market at all? That I open a shop, and if you're going to invest, you're going to sit next to my shop if I'm profitable and open exactly the same shop, rather than actually investing in some complementing business.
All businesses are not necessarily driven by innovation. Businesses are driven by profits.
So, and imagination also?
Sometimes. Imagination is not necessary for profit making. So that is the central thing. You have to, in market, there's a very important concept of creative destruction.
Right. Do you want to actually comment, just conclude everything that you have said, where we are at and where we should be heading now, very quickly?
So I would say the government should resist its plan for imposing price control, and should not consider capital controls in the wake of recent devaluation. It should not be concerned. Government should not be intervening.
What is the normal expected position of rupee vis-a-vis dollar? when you look at the natural, unconstrained situation? Where do you think it is going to stop?
So in the economy, we use sometimes this real exchange rate versus the reported exchange rate. So that is normally lesser than the nominal exchange rate. So I think that is the benchmark, which is much lower at the moment.
Can you give me a number?
I think this is about 105 rupees at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is where the economy should operate. Yeah.
Right. I'm told that we have to conclude. My producer is practically buzzing the buttons. So, Sir Ali Salman sir, thank you very much, sir, for your precious time. Let me also thank my other guests who were with us. Then we lost the connection, but Dr. Salman Shah joined us. Thank you very much to him and Dr. Abid Qayyum Satari Sahab as well. Because you have listened to our participants. The question about economy, questions are very important. But the point at this moment is that we seem to try all sort of things. In the end, it seems that we are still left with very few creative interventions or options. Let us hope in coming days we see more, policy options possible for the government of Pakistan. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Take care.